The rain is pouring outside. I'm in my warm apartment with my tea and my camera filming a video in my blankie. It's kind of romantic. So hi everyone and welcome back. So today we will be talking about how I disappointed my mother, aka dropped out of grad school. This happened back in 2018. I'm old. It was a pivotal decision in my life. Pivot! If you get that reference, we can be friends. No pun intended. Before I get into the story of how I dropped out of grad school and what happened, there are two things that I have to clarify. Considering the fact that I have a blog, I'm building a YouTube channel and all of that, I would just like to state that this did not influence my decision to drop out. So I did not leave school to pursue a social media career. I think that with people who have blogs or are trying to do something on social media, there's always this misconception that we drop out of school because we want to be Instagram famous. Like, this did not influence me in the slightest back then, and it still doesn't now, because let's be honest. And the second thing, I am not one of those people that preaches how you don't need education, that you can be successful without school and stuff like that. I mean, you can, but education is not unimportant in that process, let's be honest. I'm not some Instagram entrepreneur that bows down at the altar of Elon Musk, claiming financial freedom, selling you courses while being stuck in a pyramid scheme. Could never be me. I think that education is important, whether it be formal education or you just educate yourself through the internet, taking courses, stuff like that. Education is important. I was actually a good student. I got excellent grades and I thrived in an academic environment. I based a lot of my worth on my academic achievement because, as I stated many times in my blog and I wrote about it, I grew up in poverty, I grew up in domestic abuse, so I went through some horrible things as a child, and school was always presented to me as a way out. Like, you get good grades, get into a good school, you will be successful in life, you will, break the cycle and everything. So I really was basing a lot of my self-worth on school, and I saw it as a way out of all of the problems I was living in for years. And that's how it all started. So considering all of this, when I actually started to think more about college, getting which high school I'm going to go to and stuff like that, my problem was that I was so dead set on excelling at everything, on being perfect and having good grades, that I never showed a clear interest for anything in my life. Like, I've never been inclined to something more than other things. I was trying to excel at math, history, languages, like everything. If it was a subject, I was trying to get the best grade in it. So that kind of messed me up, because also as a child, the way I grew up, I never had a lot of time to have some hobbies or to develop some significant interest that could guide me to a college I want to be in. And the only thing that kind of stuck out were languages and writing. I mean, writing is my biggest hobby. It's the only hobby I've ever had. But writing was always presented to me as that's something you cannot base a career on. You will not succeed with writing. Like, it was always, for me, it was always seen as something that will not get me to where I was trying to go, and that was, financial security, good job, stuff like that. I've said stuff like that a million times in this video. So when it was time to pick a college, I decided to go with languages because I was good at foreign languages and linguistics. So I thought that could be the right path for me. I was kind of wrong, but more on that later. So one of the first reasons why I gave up is money. I think that this is a reason why a lot of people give up on college. When we're talking about money, I think it's important to kind of set the scene on how the education system works in Croatia. So when it comes to colleges, there are private schools, but there are very good public universities. Most people go to public university. So if you enroll as a regular student, you pay some fees of enrollment. So that's pretty much paying to get some papers pushed around so you can actually enroll. It's not significant. There is no tuition fee. So throughout all of my 3 years at university, I've never paid a tuition fee because I enrolled as a regular student. I passed all of my exams within the 4 terms. So each exam, for every lesson, you have the right to take it 4 times. and if you pass in one of those 4 times, you're good. If you fail one of your exams in those 4 terms, you, depending on how your classes are structured, you could be set back a year, or you just have to pay to retake the exam. So it's a good system. In my opinion, it's a good system. So I was a regular student. My costs were minimal. I did not have a tuition fee. I did move across country to attend university. I went to Zadar. This was a really life-altering experience for me because after living 6 months with a roommate, I actually moved in on my own. I was lucky enough to land a great apartment, and I was living there for 3.5 years, I think. And it was really good for me because I became independent. If you have the means, please move out of your parents' house when you're going to university. Just get that experience. It lasts a lifetime. So I did move across country. During my first year at university, my mom was pretty much financing me, and I also had a scholarship. So the government, sometimes even counties or cities, offer scholarships for students. You need to meet some criteria. Mine was like a socioeconomic scholarship, so poor. I met the being poor requirements, so I got the scholarship, and with that scholarship and my mom's help, I went through the first year financially. This is just financially speaking. During my second year at university, I was already financially independent because I started working. I worked at Zara, I worked as a waitress, so I would do some jobs, and combining that salary from my jobs with my scholarship, I was actually able to cover my basic necessities to actually get me through school. So I was able to cover rent, I was able to cover utilities, food. Also, one other things that Croatian universities offer are university cafeterias for students, where you literally get full meals for pennies. So kind of on the food side, I was also partly covered. And that was pretty much it for the financing. My thing is that I've been through some really rough patches while I was at university, because if I couldn't get enough shifts, enough hours, my salary would of course be lower, and I sometimes really struggled with, covering everything. I had to cover my rent and utilities so I don't get evicted. I was not ready to ask my mom for money, so sometimes I would only eat at the university cafeteria, and I would not have any food in the apartment, so I was going to bed hungry sometimes. But that was just a few rough patches I've been through. Other than that, as long as I had that drive to actually finish school, I was ready to sacrifice some things in my life in order to be financially independent and get my degree. The problem started around my third year, when I actually started realizing that this career wasn't for me, that I was unsure about what am I going to do in my life. I was studying 2 languages, just to put that out there. I was studying 2 languages, and around the third year I completely lost interest in all of it, because I was coming to that point where I had to enroll into grad school in a few months, and I was just not having it, because my only 2 options were being a translator or being a teacher, and I did not want to do either of those things. So already around January and February of the year I dropped out. In my head I already dropped out. The only reason why I pushed through the second semester of third year is because I wanted to get my bachelor's. So the problem with money here came that I was working my ass off. I had a social life on a minimum, barely nothing, and I was doing all of this to put myself through school I did not want to be in anymore. So this caused a lot of resentment, a lot of feelings of hatred towards the university inside of me, because I was really struggling and I didn't want to be there. So I just told myself, you know what, I could take a year off. So when I do my bachelor's degree, I can take a year off. I'm just going to go and work, or maybe even this was my actual plan. I wanted to go and work abroad. There were programs for students that allowed us to safely go across the border, work somewhere else. I just wanted to get some experiences, figure my shit out. I had to take some time off and figure what the fuck it is that I wanted to do, because around my third year I was already kind of aware of the fact that there is a big chance I just wasted 3 years of my life studying something I don't want to do. And on the other hand, because of the type of courses I was studying, I did not meet the requirements for a master's degree in some other universities like some other career that I want to pursue. I couldn't just, for example, go from studying languages to studying, I don't know, PR. You know, I didn't meet the requirements. My problem was also that if I wanted to not waste 3 years of my life and transfer to another master's, like to another university to do my master's degree in something else, I would have had to take in some exams, pay for them, this and that, and I would have had to prepare for those exams, which meant studying something that people study for 3 years in a few months to be able to transfer. It's a whole deal. So that was one of my options, but that thing about taking a year off, I was dead set on taking that year off because I was just done and exhausted and I couldn't do it anymore. And so I managed to push myself to push through my exams. So the thing is, to get my bachelor's, had to pass 2 final exams, one at each department where I studied. So the 2 departments I studied at, I'm not giving any names or anything, but if anybody is familiar with the university in Zadar and knows I studied 2 languages, they will know who I'm talking about, pretty much. So that first department where I took my first final exam and got my first bachelor's is perfect. Like, no notes on these professors, they were angels. I loved studying there. I really loved the whole department. Like, I have nothing negative to say about them. I went in before summer. After I finished my exams, I took the final exam there and I passed it. And after that, I had to do my other final exam at the other department. I decided to take my second final exam, so in the other department, in September, because I actually had to go and work this summer. I had a summer job on an island near Zadar actually, and I just finished my final exam in one department, packed up my shit, and I went to work. So I spent summer, I think it was end of June to September, something like that. I spent that completely isolated on an island. Like, I did not step foot in Zadar or went to Zagreb or seen my family for all of that time. So a few weeks I really had them to myself. I was waitressing at a restaurant, and that was really the period where I told myself, you cannot enroll in grad school, you are not ready for this, you are mentally not ready for this. And once I accepted the fact that I needed a year off, that's when the problems actually began. So once I accepted that, I had to tell my family, and then they meddled in and my own guilt meddled in. That's where the difficult part of me dropping out began, because like, my head already gave up a long time ago. I was just gathering enough strength to push through, but now I was in a situation where I knew that I needed a year off and I was pressurized not to do that. And also I felt an enormous amount of guilt, embarrassment, just overall feeling like a complete and utter failure because I wanted to take that year off or even quit after my bachelor's and pursue something else. Because just to set the scene of how messy my life was and why I felt so much guilt. So when I was at the first year of university, I moved to Zadar and everything. I was finishing my first semester, preparing for my exams, when my mom was actually in court trying to make sure that we don't end up homeless because of some complications with the situation with my father that I don't want to get into. One government institution that I'm not going to name was trying to take everything we had from us. So that was, when I say that we were struggling, I mean on the brink of homelessness struggling. So it was not easy for my mom to send me off to college. That's why I got financially independent. That's why I started working. So that was the guilt that was eating me up alive, because I knew that I had to give up a lot, but also people in my life had to give up some things so I could go to college. And it was this enormous pressure that I just can't give up. That I've made it so far, I need to go through 2 years of masters, like I'm a failure, I just abandoned all of my beliefs. Like, I don't know, I was such a mess, but I was going from one extreme to the next. So I would be feeling high off of acknowledging that I want a year off and being determined that I'm going to do it, to crashing down into feeling like a complete failure of a person. I started to experience extreme anxiety attacks, extreme panic attacks, and that went on for weeks. Like, those anxiety and panic attacks went on for weeks, and I never talked to anybody about it. Like, it was kind of easier while I was on the island. I could just, focus on working, and then I would torment myself before bed. I would lay paralyzed in my bed just thinking about how I wasted 3 years of my life, how I'm going to have to enroll into a grad school I don't want to be in. Like, all of this was just suffocating me. I was also a heavy smoker back then. I quit 2 years ago, but back then I think I would smoke 1.5 pack a day on a good day. Sometimes I would overdo it. My mental health and my physical health were deteriorating. I was a shell of the person I was when I actually enrolled into university, and nobody knew about this because I was so embarrassed. Like, this feeling of embarrassment was so hard that I couldn't even bring myself to open up to my friends or to my family about what I was going through. So I was just, pushing through and thinking like, okay, I'm going to figure this out. It's all going to be okay. Maybe this is just like, something that's going to go away when I enroll into grad school. Mind you, I knew since like January of that year that I'm going to drop out. I was sure that I was going to do it. I knew it was the right thing to do, and now everything was just tormenting me. I caved in. My free will, my right to choose, my anything was just broken. I was broken. I was destroyed by everything that happened. My mental health just was not at the capacity to deal with everything and to take that risk of taking a year off, and I caved. Now the thing is, I had to go back to Zadar and take my second final exam so I can finalize my bachelor and that I can actually enroll into grad school. So since I was taking the third and fourth term of the exam, so I missed the first and second one. The terms are scheduled, so if you miss one, that's done, that opportunity is gone. So I only had two tries to actually pass that exam. And now the thing is, when I was preparing for my first final exam, I was giving it my all. Like, I was studying while I was working behind the bar. Like, I was a waitress back then at a coffee shop, so every single second of free time I had in my job, I would use it to actually study, go through my materials and everything, read anything. Like, I was preparing for it because back then, before my summer job, before I actually admitted to everyone that I wanted to take a year off, I was still under this impression of push through your bachelor's and then you can take a year off. Just do this because you're so close. Now that it was September and I was supposed to take my second final exam, that strength was gone. I was like, that drive and everything, it was done. It was dead in the water. I was dead. And I just came to Zadar. I finished my summer job. I came to Zadar and I started, to finalize my studying. I was preparing during the summer and I came back, and then my brain, I think that it was subconsciously, I was trying to sabotage myself, because usually when I would take an exam and fail, I would be miserable. I am a nerd. I was a nerd back then. Like, failure was not an option in my book. No matter how many terms I had to take an exam, if I was going to take an exam, I wanted to pass. That's it. So I came to the third term with my colleagues and everything, and I failed at the first question. I just flunked. Like, it was done, and I only had one option, one chance to pass that exam, so the fourth term. Now, let's talk about this department a bit, because it's kind of important, because it actually influenced my decision to drop out. So this second department, so the second language I was studying in, was notorious. I did not know that prior to actually enrolling. So once I got into the university and I started attending my classes, people who were from Zadar or who knew more about it were like, why did you start studying that? Why did you do that to yourself? And I realized that there was a reputation that was following this department, and it turned out to be very much true. I did not want to listen to it in the beginning because I am not the type of person to listen to rumors about professors, because I know they can be unfounded. But I should have listened. I should have listened. I remember the first semester of the first year, one of the professors was like jokingly, but he was serious. I realized now that he was serious, but then he was like jokingly saying, let's see how many of you make it past Christmas. Not a lot of people made it to Christmas. People just started dropping out. And I know that there is this first wave of people dropping out where they realize that they did something wrong, so they decide to just change course. I understand that, but this was aggressive. This was aggressive dropping out. And I already realized around the second semester and especially on the second year that some professors were there to just air out their dissatisfaction with their own life on the students, and that's a stereotype, and it was very much true in that department. Like, just imagine every single bad stereotype of a college professor employed at one department. That's what I was living through. It was very exhausting. I mean, through the first and second year, I was pushing through it. I have thick skin. I do not give a shit. As long as I was passing my exams, I could just mute all of those professors out. I could just ignore all of it. But as I got into my third year and I realized that I needed a year off, I also started to observe that toxic environment I was actually studying at. And it made me realize that if this is what the academic world does to people, I want to be a part of it. Like, these people were bitter. I regret ever forming part of that department, and so they were notorious. And around my fourth term, rumors started spreading around that so many people quit, dropped out, and so many people failed the final exam that they did not have enough students to form the first year of grad school. And I thought to myself that that rumor can't be true. I should have kind of listened to that rumor as well, because I came to my fourth term and again I was sabotaging myself. I was not preparing well. And these final exams, this is not just a few things. This is 3 years of literature, grammar, linguistic, history, everything in one exam, and it was an oral exam, just to put that out there. I came to my fourth term, my colleagues that I studied with were there, and we were divided into 2 groups, I believe. And people just, when the examination started, like when people were going in, people were getting up and leaving. And that's exactly what I should have done. People were so scared of taking that exam. They were so mentally drained by everything that these professors have done to us. There was this fear of them that was created between students. People were just getting up and leaving. Like, I'm taking a year off, I can do this, I'm going to prepare better next time, I cannot go in there. Like, people were getting up and leaving after coming to take that exam, leaving. I should have done that. I admire people that did that, because I was a pussy and I did not do that. I did not leave. I went in to take that exam and I left that exam barely holding my tears in. That was the first time that actually stuff got to me, because they humiliated me. They quite frankly, they kind of insulted me. They kind of insulted me, and they said that my knowledge was not satisfactory, that I was not detailed enough. And you know what? Fail me, bitch. If my knowledge was not good enough, like if what I said was not enough, you have the power in you as a professor. It was actually 4 or 5 professors, I don't remember anymore. You have the fucking power to fail me. If I did not deserve to pass, fail me. No, they took the route of humiliating me, of giving me some additional questions just so they can like push me to pass. They did not do me a service with this. Actually, they just kind of further pushed me over the edge of dropping out, because just sitting there after 3 years of being with these professors, of working with them, I was confronted with people who were just asking me, why are you here? Why did you enroll here? Why are you even studying here? But it was not like they were trying to give me advice or like, I don't know, do something that normal professors do. No, they were humiliating me. They were ridiculing me. I felt like shit. I passed. They let me pass. I passed that fucking exam, and that's when I realized like I have no excuse to take a year off. Like, if I take a year off now, it's my decision. I will be a disappointment. But had I failed that exam, I would have to be required to take a year off. And I think this was the part of my brain that was trying to sabotage me to fail, and I didn't. They let me pass. They humiliated me, but they let me pass. Again, fail me, bitch. And I went out, I met with my colleagues, we were like drinking coffee, talking about everything, and realized that that rumor going around about the fourth term was correct. And then I came home and I cried my eyes out. I was a mess. Like most people, when you get your bachelor's, like you hit a milestone in your life, you're supposed to be happy. I was crying my eyes out because I knew there were just a few weeks before I had to enroll into my grad school program, and I was not fucking ready for it. So I enrolled into my master's, and I started taking my lessons. The problem is, I originally, when I had only two options, do you want to be a translator or do you want to be a teacher, I wanted to translate because that's something I did throughout high school as like a freelance job, and it's something I thought that I could find myself in, like it was something that I've already done. But one of those professors from that horrible department actually, during my second or third year, I think, he told me that I can't do it, that actually I'm not talented for it. Neither was he, to be honest. And since I was not at a mental health capacity to take any criticism, I just decided to abandon that idea of translating and to actually study to be a teacher or a professor. What's the problem with this is that back in high school, I worked as a translator, but I also would sometimes give some, let's say, tutoring to some of my friends. Like I wasn't charging them for it, but I would help them with, for example, math or something like that. And when somebody couldn't do something right after I showed them once, I would get pissed off. Like I was known to have a temper. I still have a bad temper. So I just, knowing I do not like teaching people stuff, I was enrolling into a grad school to become a teacher one day. I've dug my grave by enrolling into grad school, but by choosing the teacher side of it, I jumped into that fucking grave on my own. Like I jumped in there alive. And my lessons started, and I knew that I had to get a job as well. Like I had a lot of money saved up after my summer job, but the problem is I knew that I would like run through that money really fast because like I had to cover my rent, utilities. I had to also, buy some new clothes and stuff like that. Like there were expenses that I needed to cover. I had to get my learning materials and everything. So I knew that I would run through that money really fast. I mean, by the end of the year, it would be gone. And by choosing the teaching course, I actually had to study like on two departments. So on both departments I was already at, I had to study there, and I had to take my lessons there because I was a regular student. And I also had 3 additional classes that I had to take in order to one day when I graduate be actually allowed to teach in a school. That's where the issue with money started again. I had to take my lessons. I was a regular student. I had to attend my lessons in order to actually be able to go to an exam and pass it. So I had to listen to those lessons. I had to physically be there. But the problem is that my lessons would be scheduled in a way, let's say, for example, I would have lessons from 8 to 12, and then I would have lessons from 4 to 6. I couldn't find a job that was flexible enough to let me work there. So I couldn't waitress somewhere for 8 hours, and I already knew from my second and third year that I had to, let's say, work for 8 hours for a minimum of 4 days to be able to cover my expenses, considering my scholarship and my salary. Like that was the bare minimum I had to make, and I just couldn't find a job where I could, where somebody would be flexible enough for my schedule. And then I realized like, okay, this is not going well. But I started lying to myself that, okay, you have a lot of saved up money from summer. Maybe you will be able to make it until the end of January. And that's actually all I needed to do, because I got into the Erasmus program. That's an exchange student program. So I was supposed to spend my second semester in Spain. So I thought to myself, like, just push through this and then you're going to Spain. Like, you wanted to go to Spain for a very long time. You're going to go to Spain. But that didn't happen. Like, I was running out of money. My panic attacks were still there. My anxiety attacks were still there. I was not studying. I just remember that I had these few weeks that I spent in grad school where I would just get up, I would come to my lessons, I would not listen, I would not pay attention, I was not interested. I would come home, lock myself in my apartment and just like be on my laptop, be on my blog, watch something. I was becoming very isolated and I didn't study. I started failing badly at everything, and then some really bad thoughts came creeping in, because like all of those feelings of being a disappointment and a failure were still like following me around. And on top of all of that, I enrolled into grad school. Like I did the one thing that I knew I shouldn't have done. I was trying to hide this in front of everybody. Like I was going through all of this alone, and then something snapped and I was just done. I called my family and I said, I'm dropping out. I don't care. I am dropping out. And that's where I concocted a lie, telling my family that I'm going to come home, that I'm going to take this year off to work, and that I'm going to stay home within the borders of Croatia, because I couldn't go and work abroad, because I wanted to kind of appease everyone around me, and that I'm going to enroll into a private school in September and study international relations and diplomacy. That was a fucking lie. I never wanted to study that. Like, it's interesting. One of my friends was there. It's interesting. I knew I would be able to pass the exams, and I knew that I would be able to get out a student loan and pay off the tuition fee. I was already very confident in my ability to, you know, scrape by, get money, work and all of that. Like, I knew I could do it, but it wasn't something that interested me to the point where I actually wanted to do it. It wasn't my interest. I think that in that moment where I was talking to my family, I came up with that lie to cover my ass, just to somehow seem as less of a disappointment, like less of a failure. My head was just spiraling. I packed up 3.5 years of my life and I left Zadar once and for all. One might think that this is the part of the story where things start to look up, but it isn't. So I moved back home. I formally dropped out, signed all of the papers. People around me were really surprised that I did it, because nobody knew what was going through my head, and it just came out of nowhere when I realized that I was dealing with some very negative emotions about... Let's not get into that. So anyway, I came home, and I came home to people who did not approve of my decision. I came home and lived a lie that I'm going to go and study diplomacy. I came home without money, without a plan, without mental health, without any type of confidence in myself. It was a shit show, and I was depressed. I was severely depressed, and I did not let it show. Like I was just faking it, because I am not the type of person that knows how to ask for help. I am not the type of person that knows how to talk about my negative feelings. Growing up the way I grew up, I became a master of concealing my emotions. And after a few weeks, I think it wasn't even 2 weeks, I already had a job as a waitress again in my hometown, and I was a mess. All of those negative feelings were still around, and since I was barely able to keep myself afloat, like I was barely able to keep up this facade of being okay, it drained all of my strength. I became isolated. I lost all of my friends. I was not in touch with anybody. Like I felt like I'm alone in the world, and just that nobody gives a shit about me. I spent 6 months waitressing, and after that I realized, okay, this is not for me. I need to get the fuck out, and I need to move out. I need to move out again. I need to be on my own, and that's when I actually got a job at a company I still work in, and I moved to Zagreb, and I think that kind of saved me and saved my relationship with my family that was very strained back then. It's all good now, but yeah, that's actually how it ended. I dropped out in my early 20s. I'm 25 now, so there is not a lot of, age difference from me dropping out to today. And when I look back at it, I always thought that the biggest thing, like the biggest regret, would be actually enrolling into a college I wasn't sure about and studying 2 languages I didn't know if I wanted to make a career out of. But the biggest regret ended up being not listening to my gut, because I knew that I needed that year off. I knew what was the right thing to do for myself, but I let my insecurities and outside voices to influence my decision. I behaved as if I was living for other people and not for myself. I was also severely underestimating myself, because I was looking at everything, every negative thing that happened. I was thinking about how I was ungrateful, how I was a worthless disappointment, instead of thinking how I got financially independent around my 20s, that I was able to put myself through 2 years of school, that I was really resourceful. I could find my way around things when I was, determined to do something, when I had the passion and drive to do something. So I was not looking at those things. I was looking at all of the negative things. And that's what drowned me, because I told myself, if you went working abroad, something would probably happen to you, like you would get fired, you're not good enough, your bachelor's worthless, you don't even speak foreign languages that well. Like, I was eating myself alive. I can't even explain how bad my mental health was back then. It actually set the tone for a lot of things that happened in the last 3 years, and yeah, I still regret not listening to myself. So I wanted to finally share this story and talk about this, because I know there's a lot of people who struggle with this and who were in situations in which I was. So here it is: listen to your fucking self and do what's best for you, because nobody has to live in your skin. You have to live in your skin, and you have to go through that. Like, when I was going through my panic attacks and my anxiety attacks, there was nobody there. I wasn't calling for anybody. I was going through that alone. And looking back on it now, I know that everything makes you stronger, but I know that all of that could have been avoided had I just listened to my fucking self. It took a lot of reflecting, and it took a lot of strength to actually forgive myself for what I've done, because still to this day I have those what ifs. Like, what if I had dropped out when I wanted to? What if I had taken a year off? Maybe I would have gone and worked abroad. Maybe I would come back to my university, take that Erasmus program, go to Spain. Like, my life could have been so much different than it is today. And still to this day those questions torment me, but I had to find a way to forgive myself for what I've done and what I've put myself through. So that's actually how I became able to tell this story, because I literally didn't tell anybody about this. Nobody knew I was having panic attacks. Nobody knew I had anxiety attacks. Nobody knew I was contemplating some really dark shit. This is the first time that I know that I'm at a state where I can talk about it and be open about it and share the story with somebody. So I decided to share it with all of you. I'm still not sure what I'm doing with my life. I'm still not sure what career I want, and finally I'm okay with that. I'm okay with experimenting, because with working, like with getting a full-time job and everything, I actually became more confident in my abilities to work, in my abilities to adapt and to learn new things. I am not going to be defined by being a college dropout, or I'm not going to be defined by a bachelor's degree. That, let's be honest, it's quite worthless for me now. Like, it's nice to have, but it does not give me job opportunities. I did not allow myself to be defined by that, and I think that it actually opened my horizons to the fact that I can take courses, that I can re-educate myself. Like, hell, I can go back to college if I want to. I have options. I'm not limiting myself anymore, and I'm better now. Like, I'm okay. I'm happier as a person now than I was 3 years ago. I think that this is going to be one long video, and thank you all for watching and for listening to this story time. I honestly hope that nobody can relate to this. I honestly hope that you just listened to this and thought, this girl is just saying a pile of bullshit, this never happens. I hope that nobody went through this. But if you did, there's light at the end of the tunnel. Just do what's best for you. And yeah, if you want to support me, follow me, know more about me, you can follow my blog. which is luna.theblog.com, and also follow me on Instagram, which is luna.theblog. All of the links will be down in the description. If you like this video, you can subscribe to my channel, hit that bell to be notified anytime I post. You can also share your experiences down in the comments below. Share this video, you know. Thank you for all of the support. Thank you again for watching, and I will see you in my next one.